So if you're looking to build a budget PC, in this video, we're going to compare two of the cheapest GPUs that you can get that you can actually game with. One is the ASRock Challenger RX. I can even get in there, 6600 RX 6600, and the other one is the Asus Dual OC RX 7600. Both of these are from AMD, and they both happen to be two of the cheapest GPUs that you can get at the moment. And they both are pretty good for 1080p gaming, which we're going to see in the benchmarks. So what I have here at the beginning is just doing a quick comparison of the two GPUs. The cheapest 6600 I could find was almost $190, and the cheapest 7600 I could find was $248. So that almost $60 difference, you can just keep that in mind if that's worth paying up to get that extra performance out of the 7600. As you can see, the 7600 is one. The 6600 is based on their RDNA 2, and then the 7600 is based on the RDNA 3. So just comparing back and forth, 6600 came out a little over 2 years ago, so this will be a good comparison to see how is it faring in 2023. And the 7600 only came out in May, so we're talking a little over 6 months ago, like 8 months ago. 7600 has more shading units, it has more compute units, it does have a lower core clock speed, but the boost clock speed is higher. One thing that you would need to keep in mind is that the 7600 does use more power than the 6600, so depending on what your power supply is, you might need to upgrade that. And both of them have GDDR6, 8 gigabytes, 128-bit, but the 7600 does have a slightly higher memory clock speed and memory bandwidth. Before we get into the benchmarks, we're just going to take a look at some synthetic results, and this is what I used in TimeSpy, and the 7600 in TimeSpy is showing 33% higher performance. So all the benchmarks were used running the highest possible settings. The only thing I did would have been turning off ray tracing or any kind of upscaling that would have been turned on. And looking at the RX 6600 standalone, you're getting really good performance in all the games I've tested except for Starfield. That'd probably be the only game that you really wouldn't be able to play with max settings. You could play with that. It does have some upscaling to it as well, so you can play around with that to get better results. But ignoring that, the rest of the games did very well. Cyberpunk 2077, you have a 61 FPS average. Jedi Fallen Order 49. You go to some of the older games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, you get up to 118. Farcry 5, 139. So you're getting really good performance out of the RX 6600. However, for the extra $60 or 30% more, when you compare it to the 7600, in some cases, you're not quite getting that kind of performance increase like Far Cry 5 and even Far Cry 6. I thought would get better performance, but it doesn't. But if you move up to Starfield, you actually start getting into a half-decent frame rate to play that game. You're getting 48% boost on the average and 56% boost on the 1% low. Halo Infinite, we saw the biggest increase. You get a 49% increase on the average with 23% increase on the 1% low. And then moving down to Forza, like a lot of the newer games, Forza Horizon 5, Cyberpunk 2077, Jedi Fallen Order, and Forza Motorsport, one of the newer games, and which ones would also be more demanding. You're seeing a 48% increase, a 39% increase, a 35% increase, a 26% increase. So those newer games, you're seeing a considerable increase to help get you in that like a much better FPS. For the Motorsport, we're going up to 67, so you're getting at least or over that 60 FPS threshold. But then when you look at if you're playing older games, you're not really getting that much of a benefit. Yeah, you're getting a higher FPS, but really going from 107 FPS on like Ghost Recon Breakpoint up to 132 FPS, you're not going to notice that change. Whereas if you go from like 49 FPS on Jedi Fallen Order up to 66 FPS, that's going to be a lot smoother to play. Same with Forza Motorsport and Cyberpunk 2077. So a lot of this is probably going to boil down to what is the intent that you have for your GPU. Do you want something that you can use a little more into the future? I would say go with the 7600, just because you'll be able to play newer games with a much better frame rate. If Starfield is any indication of the kind of performance that you can expect to get, even with the 7600, you're going to be in trouble. But at least with the 7600, you are getting into a halfway decent FPS. But if you just plan on playing some of the older games, some of those esport titles like Fortnite on performance mode, League of Legends, or Shadow of the Tomb Raider, thing like that, the 6600 will be fine for your needs there. So you just have to take into consideration what you plan on doing with the GPU. So it's all going to boil down to your preference and your budget. With that being said, RX 6600, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great 1080p GPU. You're not going to be able to play on max settings for everything. You'll just have to play around with those settings, drop the detail down, and you should still be able to get a decent frame rate with current games and games into the future. If you found this video informative, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment. Thanks.